Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello, and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today we have a very special episode. First, I would like to say happy International Podcasting Day. Every year on September 30th, it is International Podcasting Day. And the Book Podcast Connection, my networking group, which features over 100 different book-related podcasts, are all releasing a bunch of episodes today to celebrate podcasting and especially book podcasting. And most of us are also women in podcasting. So it's just kind of a big happy hoopla today. So make sure you check out Book Podcast Connection on Instagram or www.bookpodcastconnection.com. And you can find 100 new bookish podcasts to connect with and listen to. In addition to International Podcasting Day, today I am so happy to have Sarah Hawley returning to the podcast for book 2 of the Shards of Magic series. She was here for the first book of the series, Servant of Earth, which I absolutely loved and devoured. And so if you want to go back, you can listen to her first episode. And today we're going to be talking about the sequel, Princess of Blood. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, I am good. Thank you so much for having me. Happy podcasting day. That's really cool. I didn't realize there are that many book podcasts out there now. That's fantastic.
I'll be completely honest, I didn't know either until I created the book podcast connection, which I started when I started connecting with about like 3 or 4 other book podcasters. I'm like, you know what we need is a group chat. And this was about a year, little over a year ago. I was only 4 months into the podcast here and started connecting with other podcasters. I'm like, yes, all we need is we need more of us to connect and just have a group chat. So we started off as a group chat on Instagram and have grown, and now there's over 100 podcasts, and I'm still finding more every week to this day, which is just incredible. And I love it so much.
I love that. I love how passionate readers are and how many more spaces there are for readers to find each other. And so in like the podcasting space and social media and everything, and just how vibrant the community is.
Yes, that's something that I love to talk about too, is like the rise of book podcasting. Because first we had, there was book Twitter, which isn't so much a thing anymore. There's like
Nope.
no book people left on Twitter at all, and for good reason. Then there was, Bookstagram, Book Talk, BookTube, and it's time. It's time for the book podcast.
It is, it is.
So you are here today for Princess of Blood, Book 2 of the Shards of Magic series, sequel to Servant of Earth. We are here to celebrate the release day today, which I am so, so excited for.
Me too. It's always stressful, but exciting at the same time. And this is my first time releasing the second book in a series that's not a standalone. Because like the Glimmer Falls series, the rom-coms, you could read each of them individually if you wanted to. And this one is the first time I've tried a story arc across multiple books. And so it's been definitely challenging. It's exciting. I'm not sure how it's going to be received. I hope it's received well. And then I'm also writing the third book at the same time. I will probably have turned it in by the time this airs.
Exciting news for me personally, as a huge fan of the series.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So we're going to start off with Servant of Earth. For any listeners who are new to the series, we can give them a little background and let them know what they need to know getting into the series.
Yeah, so Servant of Earth is the first book in a trilogy, and it is sort of a darker fae romantasy. It's heavier on the fantasy with like a romance subplot. And it's about a young, sort of feral human woman who ends up in this cruel, wicked, beautiful underground fairy court where she's forced to be a servant to the heirs to one of the fairy houses. They're split into six groups. There's light, void, fire, earth, illusion, and then there's lost sixth house that was blood house. So it was six total, but like there's five that are really participating in this series of trials that are going on. So she is serving the heir to earth house and trying to help her undergo the immortality trials where this fairy woman needs to earn her immortality and magic. So this human heroine, Kenna, gets sort of caught up in all of this court intrigue. She's blackmailed into becoming a spy. There's an evil king. There is a hot prince who's leading a rebellion, and she's trying to navigate all of these different complicated politics and relationships while trying to get the heck out of there because it is not a very fun fairy kingdom. No one's having a good time. A lot of trials, a lot of danger, some reasonably dark content, and then with like a sprinkling of romance and spice.
Which, oh my goodness, there's so many things I could say about that. But I have to say that one of my favorite things about this series is the political intrigue. And I am just so like wrapped up in this plot. For the first book, I did the audiobook, which was
Mhm.
incredible. If listeners, if you like audiobooks, I highly recommend the Servant of Earth audio because the narrator, she was phenomenal. And I just can't hear Kenna in any other way. She was
Yeah.
absolutely perfect.
The
And
narrator's Mia Hutchinson Shaw, and she is absolutely fantastic. They sent me over of I think it was eight different voice samples, and I was listening them through. And the moment I heard her, I was like, "Oh, that's the one! Like that's who
that's
it
Kenna's
is."
voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She was incredible. And I have to say, I stayed up until 3 o'clock in the
Oh no!
morning listening on in headphones to the audiobook. And I have never stayed up late listening to an audiobook before because
Oh my
normally like
gosh!
that's sleepy time and audio things
Yeah.
at night would put me straight to bed. I normally can't do them at night. So I am sitting in my bed just like staring in the darkness because all the lights
Oh
are
no!
off. I'm wrapped up in all my blankies and I'm just staring in the darkness, listening until 3 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't stop.
I feel like I have to apologize. That's so late.
It was wild. And it's not like it was a weekend. Like I did have to get up for work.
Oh no!
And I'm like, you know
Oh
what? But it was
no!
so worth it. And that is just how enveloped you get in this story. That's something that really gets me about a good fae fantasy is when that main plot is heavily political and you don't know who's going to betray who next and, who's
Mhm.
backstabbing who and who's messing around with who. And there's always things that you didn't see coming. And the twist at the end of Servant of Earth just blew my mind.
Good. Good, good, good.
And like there were things that I'm like, I'm really hoping that this happens. And there are things that were like, are you kidding me?
Well, I think it just gets worse. It's really fun writing the politics and the warfare and the complicated things. I think that's what I like about Fae lore in general is the sense of trickery and illusions and nothing being exactly what it seems. That makes for really interesting characters to make because you can think about like who is this character on the surface? What is the self they are presenting? And then how much does that reflect who they actually are inside? And then over time, does the self you present to the world shape who you actually are internally? And that's something I've been sort of writing. I'm talking about the first book as I'm writing the third book. And so like the third book is dealing a lot with do you sort of become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways, depending on the self that you are presenting to the world in order to survive this awful fairy kingdom.
Yes, these are definitely not your Disney childhood fairy
No.
tales.
No, they are the very wicked, cruel, conniving type that see people as entertainment and prey.
My favorite.
I know, it's so fun.
All
No, I'm like
these,
I would die immediately. Has become
yes.
one of my favorite questions to ask authors when I do events with them. If I interview a fantasy author, I'll be like, "Would you survive your fantasy world?" And everyone's like, "No, probably not." And I'm like, "No, I would be dead instantly.
Yeah.
I would not know what's going on. I
Yes.
would trust the wrong person. I would probably trip. I would trip and like fall on a sword. There's no way."
In the beginning, there is a treacherous bog to cross, and all I'm
Oh yeah.
saying is I would not have made it.
Oh yeah. No, instantly. Like I'm
Like
dead on
10
page five.
steps. Like, there we go. Whoops.
Yeah.
We
Bye.
just left. Like,
Just left. That's it.
we
Yeah.
just left and I'm already gone. Like, everyone's looking around, like, where is Crystal? Well, she's already at the bottom of the bog.
She's already
Like,
dead.
she's gone. Which we need Kenna to live through vicariously because we would
Yeah.
not get very far.
Yeah. She's such a fun character to write because she's I don't know. I mean, I think she's complicated and she's tenacious and she's sort of the only human that really could survive in a world like this, where she's got the right mix of recklessness and courage and wanting to do the right thing, but also a willingness to do some pretty questionable things during that. So she's a lot of fun and getting to sort of track her journey over the books as she's trying to navigate. She is similar to the Fae in some ways, but she's also very fundamentally different in her humanity. And the navigating the balance of that has been really fun. So Kenna can survive this world in ways that I would not.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and shift into Princess of Blood from
Yeah.
here, which will we will see Kenna rising to a new power. So let's go ahead
Yes.
and talk about that. We'll start off spoiler free for any new
Okay.
listeners. However, if you haven't read Servant of Earth yet, the sequel is going to be a big spoiler for you. So if
Yes.
you haven't
So
read it yet, you
stop
might want to pause,
listening.
go get that audiobook, listen till 3 a.m., and then come back and
Yeah.
continue from here.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead, dive right in.
All right. So Princess of Blood, if you've read Servant of Earth and you're still listening, and if you haven't, go away. If you read Servant of Earth, you know that at the very end, Kenna ends up inheriting the power of Bloodhouse. So the second book picks up right where the first one left off. She is going to Bloodhouse with her two friends, Anya and Lara. And this book is entirely about power and what it's like to suddenly be thrust into a position of power and how to wield it responsibly. Because Kenna doesn't know how to do this. She's never been a leader. She's never had wealth. She's never had influence. She just has a desire to do the right thing and protect a lot of people. So she is now responsible for bringing back this house from the dead. And how do you do that when you are one person and the shards who are sort of like gods in this world but not quite are like, "All right, this is your responsibility now. Have fun." She's like, I am one person. So it's a lot about how do you build Bloodhouse? What does it mean to be in a house? And so she takes more an approach of we don't have to be, segregated by magical powers. Like a house can be a refuge. And so there's a found family element of her trying to assemble a safe space. But at the same time, there's a very complicated political situation going on because obviously King Osric is now dead and everyone wants to rule. So Kenna suddenly has a voice because the fairies are very hierarchical in this world and they care a lot about inherited power and the house system. So all of a sudden, here's this outsider who is the new princess of Bloodhouse. And at the very end of Servant of Earth, Justin's like, well, clearly she's gonna, support me as king because he's a little delusional about that. And then, Hector, who's the Prince of Void House, is also in the running, and Kenna's not sure about him either. So you have these two rebel princes who have this uneasy alliance, and they're trying to sort of grapple for who's going to be king, and Ken is essentially a tiebreaker. But at the same time, the bad guys are also coming back with a vengeance because they're not going to let that throne sit empty. You end up having basically three candidates to be the next ruler of Mistay. And there's a bit of like a little peace period sort of while we're settling into trying to figure out who's going to be king before we end up going into complete utter bloody warfare. It is a lot of political maneuvering. It's a lot of people trying to sway Kenna to their side because ultimately whoever gets, the most houses of Mistay in support is ultimately going to be the one that succeeds because that's just how it works. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of maneuvering and behind the scenes, and then there's also a very slow burn romantic subplot because there are some complicated romantic dynamics going on between Kenna and a few people in this world. And that was really delicious too to write. It is a book of yearning, all the yearning. I'm trying to be so vague. Hard.
You're doing great. You're doing great. So I did get a ARC copy
Yeah.
of Princess of Blood, and I can confirm the yearning is on point.
It's fun. I love it. I mean, that's my favorite part to write of any romance is the tension. I
Yes.
love like the absolute favorite part is like the where you want them to get together so badly. And they're like not quite doing it. And then when they finally do, and you're like, oh, thank God. So this entire book was basically just, oh, get together, kiss.
Which is my favorite feeling.
Yeah.
As our listeners know, I also host the Something Smutty Book Club on the podcast. And in the book club, we all have a nickname that somehow correlates to what we read or don't read. And my nickname in Something Smutty Book Club is Slow Burn.
Yeah.
So
I
this
love a
book was
slow
written for
burn.
me.
Good. Good. This is like excruciatingly slow.
It is excruciating and delicious.
Good. I'm glad you like it.
So one thing that I really love is how we have seen Kenna grow so far. Her arc is not complete, but so
Mhm.
far she was this kind of feral person in her village that nobody really had much connection to outside of her best friend. And from this like feral creature in her village, she was immediately turned into a servant and held against her will, from servant into a spy, from spy into a leader of a house that everyone has written off for many, many years,
Mhm.
and a house that is somehow both powerless yet the most powerful house
Mhm.
in all of Mistay at this point in time due to how everyone needs her in order
Yeah.
to claim this throne. And I just absolutely love that kind of like dual-sidedness to the power where Kenna is somehow the most powerful person in Mistay and the least powerful person in Mistay all at the same time.
Yeah, very much so. And how you navigate a system like that because she's very much an outsider in the system, but all of a sudden everyone needs her. But she still has to do what she thinks is right for herself and for the people she cares about. I thought it was really fun. I mean, everything about Kenna's character is about fighting the story that other people have given you. The story that everyone has told about who she should be and what her worth is and her value. And as a character, she doesn't always make the right choices, but she's always fighting and she doesn't give up. That was really fun. And then you see her grappling with it. Like, I mean, I feel bad for her. I'm really putting her through it. She's not sleeping. Like she's trying so hard. She's reading. I do love she gives Hector and Justin homework where she's like, I refuse to just pick a king based on, vibes. Like I want to know who is actually going to be a good ruler. And to her credit, like even though Justin's her ex-boyfriend, like she is trying to give him a shot to prove that he would actually be a good ruler, even though her feelings about him are very complicated. So she's giving them homework. She's like, write down all your policies. And then she's staying up till 3 a.m. like reading their policies and being like, but I don't know, like what do I do? They're talking about their tithing system, like the taxes and like defense agreements with kingdoms I've never heard of. And so she's thrown completely in the deep end, but she's trying so hard. And so I really love that about her because she really doesn't know anything about the fairy politics, but she's still going to do her best and pick who thinks she thinks is going to be the best ruler for the majority of people. Yeah.
In this novel, Kenna is learning so much about Fae politics while simultaneously applying human politics to the Fae. And to make it even more complex, applying her own personal moral compass to the Fae politics, which is not the same thing as human politics. It is completely a third separate thing that she is trying to bind all these things together in order to do what is best, not just for her, but for her friends who have been horrifically mistreated in the first novel, as well as for this whole kingdom that she is now trying to shape its future for an entire kingdom that enslaved her essentially and has
Yep.
mistreated her and mistreated so many people that she has cared about, and even people like her that she has known as they've been taking advantage of humans for centuries at this point.
Mhm.
And that has to just be so much to weigh on her shoulders.
One of the themes that I've enjoyed exploring is how different leaders wield power and the responsibility to individuals versus the collective. So, Dresden and Oriana are two of my favorites, sort of for thinking about this, because obviously Dresden is the leader of Firehouse. He was planning this entire revolution. He was planning it for a very long time, and he's the kind of person who is willing to make sacrifices he believes are necessary, but are possibly questionable to bring about the greater good. He's willing to throw some of his people under the bus. And Oriana, the leader of Earth House, by contrast, is basically doing everything to keep Earth House safe and neutral and protect her people. But as a result, she's not engaging in the larger politics. And so her inaction is actually enabling some really monstrous things to happen elsewhere, but her people are safe. So you kind of contrast these different approaches. Like, what responsibility do you have to your individual people instead of the world at large? And then with Kenna, she's someone who's so loyal to her loved ones, and she wants to do anything for her loved ones. If you give someone like that power over a house, she's going to transfer that loyalty to the people under her protection. But as a result, what is she doing with the greater good? Is she willing to make these sacrifices? What is she going to have to do? It's really interesting to look at the politics from all of these different characters' perspectives. I think they're all wrong and all right. I mean, not all of them. Like, the bad guys are pretty bad, but a lot of the characters are in that morally gray middle where I want you to think, I get where that person is coming from, even if I don't agree with them. Even with Kenna, sometimes I think there's choices she make that I wanted to be very difficult and to not have a right answer, because that is the entire point, is that she cannot always pick the 100% morally correct and good decision. It would be impossible.
I think that right there is what really creates a very just authentic reality to Miss Day. Because in real life, there are so many decisions that don't have a truly moral answer to them. You know, morality is not black and white, and so it shouldn't be in this type of political
Mhm.
fantasy either.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think there are decisions that seem more correct than others. But no, I think it would also be impossible inherently for her to be a part of this world, because they also aren't human and they are never going to live entirely by human norms. And she can definitely find the nicer parts and the more benevolent parts, but it is always going to be a world that relies on brutality and trickery. And so you have to do a sort of different calculus than you might have to as a leader in a human world.
And I think that's something that Kenna really does learn in this novel is that she can only apply human politics and human empathy and human morality to the Fae world so much because it's just not going to take. I do like seeing how she has to kind of expand her moral worldview in order to not just survive, but thrive in this
Mhm.
new world of hers.
Yeah, but I'm glad you enjoyed that aspect. It's been a lot of fun to think about and to sort of think what would a society would actually be like where they live forever. Because it'll get overpopulated very quickly if they if they live by the good human morals, I suppose. So I kind of think that the Fae's brutality is inherent to immortality, because they're sort of these checks and balances. They can't just be happy and benevolent and everyone has a great time forever and ever. Like, it would get very overcrowded in Miss
Yes,
Day.
very
So they're
quickly.
always, yeah, so there's always going to be these periods of unrest, and times when things are really not looking good.
So, the Shards of Magic series isn't just political fantasy, but it is also very much a romantasy in the aspect that it is there, the romantic subplot is a major part of the story.
Yes.
And Also includes quite a bit of spice.
There is some spice. There
Yes,
is.
yes, yes. Featuring multiple potential love interests for Kenna. So,
Yes.
for you as the author, what was that like exploring the different potential paramours for your main
Yeah.
character?
Every time I write a romance, I think about who the people are together and what they offer each other. And I think they have to offer something the other is missing in a way. And it needs to be a unit where they are stronger together than they are apart. Kenna has two love interests in the series. And when looking at them, I want the question to be, is this actually a good fit specifically for Kenna? And if people have read Servant of Earth, you know that Dresden did some pretty messed up stuff at the very end. I'm still a fan of Dresden, which
Yeah.
I every time I tell someone, they're like, "No, he's horrible," and I'm like, "I don't think he's horrible. I think he is someone who is willing to sacrifice his girlfriend of 3 months in the name of a kingdom, and I don't think that's the wrong choice. Actually, I just think that that is the choice that that character would make. And then the question is there a possibility to be redeemed from that? Can Kenna forgive something like that, or does she need someone who loves a little more selfishly and ferociously?" And that's been really fun to play with. I also tried in Servant of Earth, I tried to write Dresden as a little bit of a yellow flag consistently. Like I always wanted there to be a little element of slight unease where you're like, this man is hot, but he's giving off a couple of red flags here. It has been fun seeing reader reactions to him, but I also don't think he's as terrible as a lot of people think he is. But I mean, he's also my baby, though. And then the other love interest being, I'm like, how specific am I allowed to be? But if you read Servant of Earth, you know that there's some interesting tension going on with Callan, who is the king's executioner and spy and is blackmailing Kenna. And that was a really interesting relationship to explore as well because both of them are grappling with a complete change in identity where Ken is going from being completely powerless servant all of a sudden she's a princess. Callan is going from he's been essentially been a political prisoner his entire life from a child raised by this tyrant king and forced to serve this tyrant king in exchange for his house's survival. So he's been the weapon wielded by this monster and all of a sudden the monster is dead. And what does a weapon do when the person that has directed his entire life is gone? So I think both of them are kind of floundering in terms of identity and how you change your entire way of being. So they find some comfort in each other in that. But there's also this sort of unease because who can you trust in Miss Day? And can she trust this guy who has done some pretty objectively terrible things? It was so fascinating to do their push and pull and the tension between them and the question of who do you trust and all of this. What I really like in Princess of Blood is that we get a lot deeper into Callan's psychology because he was very much a bit of an enigma in the first book. And this one, you start to peel the layers back and see who he actually is underneath, because he exemplifies absolutely what most of the characters are experiencing in this story, which is that everyone is a little bit different from how they look on the surface. He is the poster child for that.
He really is. When I
Yeah.
first started Servant of Earth, I did not expect him to be a character I was going to like at all. Like
Ah, good.
our first introduction to him, like he is awful and I hate him and I want him to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
He like
he's
the
such
very
a
first thing he does is kill someone
yes, exactly.
publicly.
Like, and that was, the first impression of him, and first
Yeah.
impressions have a lasting impression. I'm like,
Yeah.
he's awful. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And then you just had, sweet baby boy Dresden just being, smoldering,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Actually, no, yes, pun
So
intended.
hot. Yeah.
The
Yes,
literally
you
hot
have Mr.
Dresden.
Smolder. No,
Absolutely.
they're both really fun.
Yeah, and it wasn't until actually I can tell you the exact moment that I started to like Callan. And that was when he's
Ooh, I
like
want to know.
it's when he's like, I know you're gonna start sleeping with him, but don't sleep with him. And I'm like, all right, that works for me. I don't know why it's that moment, but it was that moment that I'm like, okay, no, he works for me.
Is that the one where he like finds her where he finds her in the hallway and he's like, are you doing him?" Or is
Yeah.
it the one where they dance and he's like, "Don't trust anyone."
Yeah, no,
Uh
like when he first finds and he's like, are you doing them yet? And she's like, no.
And he's like,
And
you're
he's
gonna,
like, you're gonna, you shouldn't, but you're gonna.
but you're
And
gonna.
and then the moment she does, obviously, he's just like, I told you so.
He's like, nope, you did it. I knew you would do it.
You would do
I mean,
it.
he's seen so much. He's been a spy all of this time. He's been a weird little voyeur. And you see enough of this over time, and especially I think he's been watching how Dresden operates for a long time. And Dresden is someone who wins allies through charm. There's this line in the second book where he's talking about how his power comes from making other people want something, and it might be a better world, and it might be, something for people they love, and sometimes it's him. And so for Dresden, and I do think his affection for Kenna is real. Like I don't, that's
I
not entirely
agree.
fake, but I
Yeah.
do think Dresden is someone who almost sees his own body as a tool. We dive a lot more into Dresden and his psychology after the events of Serpent of Earth, because I think he's very complex, and I think that will take a toll on someone to always see themselves as just another tool in the toolkit, is if that's how he's seeing his approach to love and sex and things like that. So yeah, they just have very different approaches to the world, Dresden and Callan, and I think that has brought them into conflict in many, many ways. So they also absolutely hate each other's guts. And that's interesting. So it was fun seeing them butt heads too. I really liked writing
Yes.
a scene where they're at this picnic and they're both kind of, fighting over Kenna. Not literally, but you can tell.
Yeah. Like we're
Yeah.
arguing about one thing, but secretly they're really
Yeah.
arguing over her, and we as
Yeah.
the reader know it. Which always
It's a
just
lot of fun.
adds it just adds a new fun little, it's like a sweet treat in between all of the political ramifications of everything going
The
on.
murder. Yeah.
Yeah, all the blood and gore and death, and then there's like
There's,
just
I mean, there's
little
a lot.
moments of they're fighting over
I
her.
do think there's fun stuff and there's moments of comedy, and I love the sparring lessons. Callan is
Hmm.
teaching Kenna how to fight in book two. Basically, her very first confrontation with a fairy as the Princess of Blood goes very badly. Because she's not, like, she's just a human. She's not going to be a magically an amazing, incredible assassin. She is going to get her ass kicked. And so Callan sees that and is like, okay, like we need to rectify this. We need to make sure you actually survive. Maybe it's because he wants her to pick a king, or maybe he just wants her alive for his own reasons.
One thing I love about Callan and how he sees Kenna is he simultaneously sees her as this like awe-inspiring enigma and this tiny little baby, helpless, vulnerable baby, all at the same time. It's like somehow you're both incredible and amazing and resilient and also completely helpless and insane all at the same time. Like, I'm amazed you're still alive, but also
Were
I'm
you alive?
amazed you're still alive.
Yeah. And I think honestly, that's one thing with Callan is that it was very hard for him to let himself care for people because he keeps seeing them be taken away. And he's watched this over and over again. And I think that was actually the turning point for him. One of the turning points for him, is at the end of Servant of Earth when she actually does survive when she shouldn't survive. And like he was already getting attached. You could tell from their dance and various other things. He was already getting attached. And then the worst case scenario happened, and it just like he's always thought it will because this is just how it goes. And then, Kenna is the proverbial cockroach. Like she's not going anywhere. And so he's like, "Oh shit. Like okay, oh she's here. Okay. All right, we're going to work on this." Like like I will make sure I'm going to equip you in every possible way because she keeps defying his expectations and defying everyone's expectations. And so I think for Callan, it's about allowing the vulnerability of hope that maybe the worst case scenario won't always happen. And once he allows himself to believe that, he's going to be very single-minded in making sure he does everything he can to preserve that possibility.
Which I love.
But yeah, but now also like he's such a schemer and he's such like a spy and a plotter. So like one of the things that he loves is being surprised. And so Kenna will just like she'll do reckless things, she'll blurt things out, she'll make political decisions that no other fairy would make. And Callan is always just kind of like looking around the room. Like he's like, okay, what's everyone thinking about this new and interesting development? So there's also that element of excitement that she brings because she does not think like a fairy. She very much thinks like her own person, and her humanity does inform that. So I had so much fun writing their dynamic.
Overall, just the entire world of Mistake is so interesting and beautiful and deadly all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Scary
mentioned,
place.
yes, it is. It is a weird place. So you mentioned that you are currently finishing up the third
Yeah.
and final,
And final. Mm-hmm.
which is
I
exciting and sad at the same time. How does that
I know.
feel for you?
I mean, right now I just want this draft to be done. So I'm like, oh God. Yeah, it's interesting and it's emotional because these characters have lived in my head for a really long time. I wrote Servant of Earth in 2017, and it just took a really long time to get published. So I had their ultimate outcome in mind, and it has been interesting seeing what changed actually because my original conception of some of the people who lived or died or who's good, who's evil. Some of that did shift, often very dramatically, from how I first envisioned the story to how I'm writing it today. And sometimes that's just related to word count limits. Like there's a character in book three who survives entirely because of word count limits. I was like, I don't have enough page time to deal with what it would mean if this person died. So I guess they live. Because
That's like a
and so I'm
whole
like,
new level
I
of
know,
plot armor. It's word
I
count
know.
armor.
I was like, gosh, like I have a word count limit for my publisher. Like, I guess you live. But then that changes the political landscape. And it was actually the same in book two. I had to cut an entire subplot from Princess of Blood because it was too long. And this is already a pretty long book. So then I'm writing book three, and I'm like, this completely changes how I'm writing book three because I don't have the groundwork that would have been laid in Princess of Blood to then explore. So I had to completely rework how that plot resolves in book three. And there was a character that was initially supposed to be awful and evil, who's now one of my favorites. And so yeah, it's interesting, but it's also really nice because when I first wrote this and it didn't sell, I had this sort of grief that Kenna's story would never get told. Where you're like, I want her so badly to go through this journey, but there is no point in writing a sequel to a book that no one wants to publish. So I'll just write new books. And then finally, it's like, now is the time. And so Kenna's getting her story, and that's really nice. It's a mix of like bittersweet sometimes, and finishing it is rough. And there was one scene I wrote where I cried for 15 minutes after writing it because I knew it was something that had to happen narratively, but I didn't want to do it. And then I did it anyway. And so it's definitely been an emotional roller coaster. But right now I'm in the sprinting towards the deadline stress phase where I'm like, I love this book and I hate this book and I need this draft to be done.
So that you can get back to enjoying it.
Yeah, and I do find that I hate every book until, and then I like turn it into my editor, and then I get notes however many months later, and I revisit, and I'm like, oh, this isn't too bad, And then I find that the story takes shape during edits for me, so I like editing better than I like writing. When you're in the thick of it, you kind of can't see it. You just know the deadline, and
Yeah,
you know that your first draft is not going to be as good as the last draft. So you're like, I'm just going to get it done and send it to the editor, and I can make it better later, and then I will learn to love it. And that happened with Princess, actually. Princess was the hardest book I've ever written. It was just really difficult. There was too much, and obviously, like an entire subplot got cut. Like there were some big edits because of word count limitations and things like that. So it was this absolute slog. And there were times where I was like, there a story in here? What am I doing? And then when it finally came together at the end, I'm like, I'm really proud of this. Like this was absolute misery to get here, but it's amazing. And then I'm like, but I'm so proud of the creation. I don't know. Every book's different.
absolutely. And I have to, my favorite, and I've said this on the podcast before, but my favorite form of storytelling or of books, or even holds true for many movies as well, is a trilogy. I am a
Mhm.
sucker for a trilogy every time, and I have to say, usually the second book or second movie is usually where that trilogy shines. And I have to say that this really holds true for Princess of Blood. This is such an excellent midpoint of a trilogy that has, ties in through the first and leaves you wanting the third one so much more. Like this was the perfect like pinnacle moment for the trilogy.
Thank you. I love that. I think part of why it was so hard to write is because like they talk about is it Save the Cat where they talk about the fun and games in the middle. And it's like there's just this big middle section of a book that's supposed to be fun and games, and it's where things happen. Um, And I hate that section because it's not fun. And I understand it's like I know where we're starting, I know where we're ending, I know some key points along the way, and in the middle, stuff happens. And I have to invent the stuff that happens. And for a trilogy, the entire second book is like the fun and games. Like it still has the structure of a story, but for the overarching story, it is, I call it the sticky middle. When you're trying to draft through the sticky middle, you're like, something is like, there's just a lot of stuff going on and it's hard. It's like, I know my destination and I know where I began and I got lost somewhere in the middle. So for me, the entire experience of writing book two was being trapped in fun and games. Unable to find my way out. So now I'm writing the third book and it's very much like the final act, you know. So it's a lot more um excitement perhaps. There's a lot of stabbing. It's a very stabby book.
It's
Uh,
very stabby. There's the tagline.
yeah,
It's
it
very
is
stabby.
stabby. But there's also kissing, you know? Like it's someone was asking me the other day, they asked what kind of genre of fantasy I write, and I said, well, it's romantasy, so there's swords and kissing. And they said, well, what is the balance? Like what is the ratio of swords to kissing? And I do think there's majority swords in these books, but there's still a lot of kissing.
Which I love.
Yeah.
So, my question for you
Uh-huh.
is how did you approach writing a concurrent trilogy as opposed to writing your interconnected standalones? Did this change your writing process at all?
Not the process. I don't think the actual experience of how I write a book is different. I do think the plot complications were different because of that whole not standalone element. I did rely a lot more on using sticky notes this time around, which I think is going to be something I do on all of my books, where multiple times throughout the process, I'll write down every single scene that happens on a sticky note and I'll put it on my door in a grid, my bedroom door. And that lets me see the outline of the plot as a whole. And so I can see, well, oh, I thought I was at the midpoint, but actually, I'm only a third of the way through all of the things that are supposed to happen. Or you can say, oh, this character is on sticky note number three, and then they don't come back till sticky note 26. So I should probably introduce them earlier. So that's been really helpful. I think with Princess, I went through about, I don't know, 3 or 4 rounds of sticky notes, just breaking and re-breaking the plot. And I've only done it once for the third book and then swapped out a couple sticky notes on the way. So that's been really helpful. I think this experience has taught me that I need to be more of a plotter. It's not really how I operate. I'm kind of a pantser. I have a 3 act structure in mind. I know beginning, I know ending, I know a couple climactic points. Like I know the overall shape of it, but I don't outline scene by scene. In fact, the only book that I've ever outlined scene by scene was Servant of Earth all those years ago, and then I just stopped doing it because I like taking the story wherever the characters seem like they want to take it. But that made it very difficult in a trilogy of this scale to pants. So I think doing anything of this scale again, I would need to just be better about plotting. It sounds bad to be an author and being like, I'm bad at plot. Some people, it's just they structure everything and that's how their brain works. And for me, it's like, no, it's a little chaotic and I discover things on the way. And it's been fascinating actually with book three because I had this whole idea of something that characters are looking for. And it became something entirely different halfway through because I was like, something's not working. And so now, and that ended up changing a bunch of the lore and a bunch of things. So the story is very adaptable based on what's feeling right for the characters.
So let me tell you, the number of authors who come on my show and describe their writing process as chaotic.
Yes. Is it everyone?
It is definitely a majority. Like
Yeah.
if I think if any word has been used more than any other in regards to describing your writing process, it is chaotic. Some form
Yeah.
of chaos is always, so I think that's just really part of being a writer is embracing
Yeah.
the chaos.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm fascinated hearing how people write their first drafts, especially because some people, I usually write in order. Now I do give myself more permission to skip ahead and just say I'll finish the scene later if it's not working. Because usually if it's not working, that means there's a problem somewhere in my manuscript and there's a reason the characters don't seem like they're naturally doing what they should be doing. So I give myself more permission, but I still write front to back. And there's some people that write all over the place and they just write random chapters. And there's some people that write by hand. And I would never. And so I love hearing it because we all end up in the same place, but we come at it from completely different perspectives and timelines and everything. So it's really interesting. I'm very much an overwriter. I was telling someone that I'm someone who has to color outside of the lines to figure out where the lines are.
Hmm.
So all of my drafts, and this includes the romances, they're all a lot longer than they end up being. So, like Princess of Blood, my first draft was about 175,000 words. And then
Oh,
I trimmed it to about 145,000 words because it's like once I had the giant sprawling mess of it, I could say, okay, this needs to go. This needs to go. How do I make it fit into the shape of a book? And I think like even like A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, I think the first draft was probably in like the 120,000 range, and it ended up being 100,000. So like I consistently always overwrite and then have to pare it back. But I have a friend who just like writes dialogue mostly and writes really short and then always has to flesh it out. And I'm like, I would love to do that. That sounds great. I would prefer not to do all of this extra work that I then have to scrap.
yeah, I think I would qualify as an underwriter. The first
Yeah.
draft of my manuscript was exactly 50,000 words. And I'm like,
Oh my
it has a
gosh.
beginning, middle, and end. Like, there's a complete story.
Yeah.
And then slowly going back and like seeing where I can expand, in that sticky middle that you mentioned, on where let's learn more about this character, or like, hey, we can add more to the overarching plot by showing how these decisions affect before we get to the end. So I love that.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm like so jealous of underwriters. Give me your powers.
Well, and at the same time, just like I'd love to be an overwriter and like have, too many words and just have to cut stuff out. So it's always, grass is always greener on the other
Yeah,
side kind of thing.
that's true. That's true.
I think it really just goes to show that there is no wrong way to be a writer as long as
Yeah.
you write and you complete what you're writing.
Yeah. And you don't use AI to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Just no, just don't. Don't
No,
even think about it. Like just
doesn't
don't do
count.
it. I
Yeah.
think there's been so much discourse on AI and writing now that I don't understand why people are still coming out. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I used AI to write that." Like why? Why?
No. No, it's
Just
like
don't.
that's absolutely despicable. I hate it so much. I hate writing with AI. I hate AI art. I want nothing to do with it at
Yeah.
all. Um,
Absolutely. So, I know that you were finishing up the third novel in the Shards of Magic. Do you have plans for what you are going to do next?
I do. I am going to be jumping straight into edits on a rom-com. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Exciting. Back to rom-coms.
Yeah, so
So,
the dream is to continue writing both genres, perhaps alternating. So I am going to edit this rom-com, which I finished a draft of earlier this year, and then I am going to pitch some ideas for another romantasy. And so I've got
so
a few things in my head, ideas that I'm gradually fleshing out mentally. Once Princess is launched, once Shards of Magic 3 is turned in, once the rom-com is edited and turned in, then I'll start working on generating a pitch for a new thing. So it never really ends. It's
nope, it
always
never
going.
does.
Yeah.
Well, that is really, really exciting to hear, and I cannot wait to see what is coming next. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me again, a repeat author. I
Yeah.
love having you on the show. You're welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you. No, this is fun. I really enjoyed it.
Do you have any final parting words for our listeners?
Oh, I hope you like the book. Request it from your library. I don't know. Buy
You know
it if
what?
it sounds interesting,
We'll
please.
we'll take that. We'll take that.
Nothing profound to say. I'm so tired.
Oh, I love that. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Princess of Blood is out today. If you haven't picked up Servant of Earth, you've got a great new Fae Romantasy series to
Yeah.
immerse yourself in. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Don't forget today is International Podcasting Day, so feel free to check out some of your favorite podcasts, maybe show them a little bit of extra love today as we all celebrate just, connecting and talking into microphones. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @Must Love Books Podcast. Thank you and happy reading.